This is our first ever podcast of the Lighthouse. It's a podcast sponsored in partnership with Hola Data, which is an organization that was set up to give Hispanic and Latinos in the digital infrastructure a voice, a platform. Our mission is pretty simple. It's said that by 2060, 1 in 4 Americans will be of Hispanic and Latino descent. And our mission is to just provide a platform that the leadership in the data center and digital infrastructure space is of equal representation. In a perfect world, it'd be 50% men and 50% women. So super excited to have 2 wonderful leaders in the space here, 2 really powerful women in the space. And so with that, I want to introduce you to our guests, Noemi Cherrez Velasco and Madeline Vega. Why don't you guys tell us about yourself?
I was born and raised in Ecuador in a very small city named Manta. So I moved to Mexico City when I was 19. And I studied my career there. And I graduated as a bachelor business in international bachelor degree in international business. And now I'm moved to Austin, and I'm a business development manager and working for the tech industry and leading the LATAM region in Mexico, Brazil, and Colombia.
Awesome. Thank you, Noemi. Madeline?
Yeah, thanks for having us here. Very nice to share the opportunity to share our experiences. In my case, I am from Puerto Rico. I also from a small town called Ciales in the mountainside. And then I went to electrical engineering in the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez. Had many opportunities to, do internships and then, some very different experiences that led me into getting into engineering. Ended up coming to Austin right after school. Worked for IBM for almost 21 years. And then recently, last year, moved into NVIDIA. I'm a director there. Austin has been a great place to work, to live. And the companies that I've worked for has been really very great.
So much to unpack. There are a lot of similarities just right off the bat. So I'll start with you. Noemi, I'm curious, you grew up in Ecuador. You said you moved to Mexico City at 19. Was English, your English is fantastic. Was English something that you learned growing up, or did you learn it later in life?
I learned it growing up, but I think it got better when I moved to Mexico City and started my career at the Tec de Monterrey.
Tec de Monterrey, okay.
Yes, and it helped me a lot to develop the pronunciation and the grammar skills. So, I think after that, having the experience to work in multinational companies helped me to get involved to U.S. companies or in EMEA and APAC. So
that's fantastic. And you, Madeline, I'm assuming in Puerto Rico, being a territory of the United States, right. Is English pretty common in schools? Or
yes, yeah, you have to take English every year. Really helps you more when you're watching TV in English, right?
Makes sense, yeah.
More. But also, I did have an English. My mom was an English teacher, so that helped as well. But still,
what was I'm curious if there's any similarities here. What was the kind of the routine at home? Was it Spanish 100%? Was it English to try to help you learn? What was the mindset?
In my case, it was Spanish all the time. Okay. Actually, yeah.
And you know what I mean?
Spanish. My parents don't speak in English.
Right, very well. So me growing up, for example, Spanish was in the house. When I went to school, I learned English for the first time. And we kind of had, when we have visitors or I grew up in Mexico. So when I had family come over, if we spoke English in the house, we get in trouble because not everybody understood. And so just out of respect, you spoke the language that everybody in the house understands. So you guys grew up speaking Spanish. I'm curious because I hear the accent. Yeah. How has that affected you positively or negatively in the workspace now that you're now both working in Austin, you're both working for large companies? Do you think your accent has been anything that you've had to overcome across your career?
Not in my case. They immediately picked up that I'm overseas or whatever, foreign. But I think it's nice. I don't mind, they immediately ask, do you speak Spanish? Yeah, I'm very proud to say I speak Spanish. Awesome. Sometimes I've encountered people, I know they have accent and also say, for me, it's more comfortable just to speak Spanish. It's my first language. So I asked, do you speak Spanish? And like, oh, un poquito. But say like, okay, please help me because I don't know, about cars. I don't know any language or words about cars. So for me, it's easier just to try to explain something about my car is malfunctioning something. So I think it's not a trouble. I feel proud to be able to say I speak 2 languages.
That's incredible. And has your experience been the same?
Yeah, I would say the same type of experience. Like, people pick up on it, right? They know and they would ask. But it's all fine, all good. I think when you mentioned, about the knowing how to speak about cars or whatever, right? But in our industry, there's a lot of terminology that we also in Puerto Rico we mix Spanish and English, right? Spanglish. So there are a lot of terminology that I actually learn in English, right? About technology, like
and data
performance.
Center, yeah. I only know the words in data center business in English, so it's like, how do I say this in Spanish?
Right. And I think one time I ended up working with somebody from Spain, and then they actually were explaining everything in real Spanish.
Real Spanish.
Yeah. And then all the terminology, right? Like I was learning the terminology that we are supposed to be using if we're going with full Spanish.
Full Spanish, no, 100%. I always tell the story when I met Freddie for the first time. I was really young in my career. I just graduated college. Freddie had started coming up in page where he is now, and I was the Freddie translator because I spoke Spanish. I didn't have an accent like Freddie has or as thick as accent Freddie has, and so we would always he'd help me learn a tremendous amount because he'd have to explain it to me in Spanish, and I had no idea what he was talking about. So he'd have to explain it to me, and you know how when you have to learn something to then teach somebody else, you have to really learn it. So for me, it was like he was my mentor, and I don't think he even realized that he was my mentor, and it was because of the English translation there. So that's fantastic. We've heard a lot of commonalities as we've talked to different of the members. And I think for some people, the accent has been maybe a self-imposed. Maybe it wasn't perceived by others, but for them, it was something that they felt they needed to overcome. So I think it's fantastic to hear from you that you guys, one, Noemi, you're proud of it. You're something that you actually hold as like a badge of honor, if you will. So it's really, really cool to hear. I'm curious starting up, I'm curious about you growing up. So did you always know, like if you were to look back and say, hey, talk to the 5-year-old version of yourselves or 6-year-old version of yourselves, do you think you'd be doing what you're doing now?
5-year-old maybe would have been an astronaut or an archaeologist. Okay. 5-year-old
Fantastic.
Me, right?
How about like 15, 16-year-old?
But then, so I was very good at math, right, in school. So, and I had parents that were teachers, right? So education was really, really important in the household, and it was just expected that I would go to college and all that, right? So teachers were always telling me, you're so good at math, you should be an engineer, right? But I didn't know what that meant. But by 11, I remember at 11, I was like, okay, I'm going to be an engineer. So I decided to be without knowing what it was. And once I started saying that I was going to be an engineer, because everybody assumed that I was going to be, then I was like, okay, I'll do it. Later, in the 15-ish years old, then I ended up going to some summer camps at the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez for math and science, and then the next year for engineering. And that actually helped me know that, yes, I do want to be an engineer. And it also helped me select which engineering, which then I selected electrical engineering. So by 11, I had already known or not decided. And I stuck with it.
That's fantastic. Noemi, I'd love to hear your version because that's such a rare thing compared to what we've heard from other people.
I love that we have similarities already, but I changed my mind. I must say that when I was 13 and everything about like internet and systems engineering was a boom, I told my mom, I want to be a system engineer. And she was, yes, the first engineer in the family. I was like, yeah. And after that, when I got to the point I graduated from high school, she was like, okay, ready. I'm gonna like sign you up, and in the university of the best one in engineers in Ecuador. I was like, no, I'm not gonna be an engineer. That's like, where is my social gonna be? Like, it's not like for me was like, no, that's not that cool. All engineers like just studying and working, and what about the social life? So I said, no, I'm going to study international business now. She was, oh, well, okay, whatever makes you happy. But the funny thing is, like, I didn't study systems engineering, but I ended up like working for a tech company and understanding. So I think, yeah, that was meant to be, even though I switched and I didn't want it. I was good at math too, and everyone was telling me, no, you should be an engineer. I'm like, yeah, but what about the social life? So I decided, no, I will study something that will help me to open up in different industries. But I ended up in the in kind of engineering industry, like a lot of data and data centers, infrastructure, telecom. I studied in the telecom industry. So for me, it was easy to pick up all the terms and understanding the topology and how the SLD works. So yeah, probably I was an engineer by heart, but
That's awesome. I think one of the things that we're trying to reach, one of our pillars that we talk about with all the data, is really reaching out to the community of kids that are in high school and just sharing with them the opportunity that exists within our footprint. There's a lot of unknowns. A lot of people don't know how to get into these careers. And I look at my path, for example, and I kind of want to parlay that into my next question. I wanted to be an intellectual property lawyer. And the only reason why I wanted to do that is I actually Googled at the time, highest paying job out of college. So I knew I wanted to make a job that made money. I didn't really know what my paths were, and so I Googled that, and it was an IP lawyer. And at the time, you needed to have an engineering degree to then go to law school. So I was like, okay, I'll go engineering undecided, and I got the best scholarship in electrical. It's like, I guess I'm going to study electrical engineering. And my path then got me into construction and data center construction. And so I got in by luck, not because that was my plan. And so I'm curious, if you were to give advice now to students that are maybe thinking about their juniors or seniors in high school, they're thinking about pursuing their degree, or even kids that are in college today that are thinking of changing majors or pursuing a different angle, what advice would you give them?
For kids like middle school time, I would say take the advanced math classes. Take them, right? If you can, right? Just because it just opens up so many other opportunities, right? It just allows them to pick something later. Of course, if their passion is something else, they should also select whatever. But if they're good at math, if they do not, and especially for girls during this time frame, make sure that they don't shy away from it and they keep going. If they're good, keep going, right? Because then keep going in high school, because again, it just opens up extra opportunities. And that's what I'm trying to do with my daughter, right? Like, she has a lot of interests that are not necessarily that, but she's really good at it. And please continue taking the harder classes. And then when they're, and that's kind of the advice, at least I think it will still be good right now. And that's how I've seen it. I'm not sure how things will be changing, right? With AI, it's going to be so much different, the workspace in 10 years. But right now, I would say still try to do that. And you mentioned about money, right? If money is something that is the problem, right, then try to find the scholarships, right? Because there's so many scholarships and research on that. So those would be the two advice.
Fantastic. How about you, Noemi? Any advice you'd give?
Yeah, I think that most important is find what you like to do. I've seen the opportunities here in the US is like, and I think all over the world, like you can be like a psychologist, and then if your passion is like any other stuff, you can actually teach yourself and take like different classes and start building your own path, even though you chose like way back, like don't worry. I will say, like, don't worry if you chose something and then you can always learn something new if you want to change your path. And mostly, like, if you are focused and if you're like driven as money or like having something like your goal, having a nice car or a nice house or be successful, like focus on what you like and teach yourself to do it like the best that you can. And I think you will enjoy that. And for now, as you mentioned, AI is going to be like a huge thing probably. So yeah, nowadays I'll recommend myself like know how to program like
Absolutely.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I also wanted to add on that
Absolutely.
about, it's important to try to be as well-rounded as possible, right? We were lucky at our college that our program is also actually 5 years long, right? That's the minimum.
The undergrad program,
The
right?
undergrad,
Okay.
right?
Fair enough.
But it's because they made us take extra electives, like in the humanities, and I ended up taking many classes in psychology, which was kind of nice, right? I kind of liked it, and it helps a lot also when you're working with teams.
Emotional intelligence.
Right. And subconsciously, right? It's not like I'm analyzing anybody specifically, right? But there's a lot of concepts that probably come into play. So I would say, yeah, you have to pick something, but be as well-rounded as possible. And as you mentioned, you can always also change your mind and course correct and, move to a different thing. So there's always options.
That's fantastic. So I'm curious, one of the common themes, and I don't know if you hit on this, were you first-generation college students or for either of you, or did your parents...
Personally, my parents had been
to college. How about you as well?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm curious, one of the common themes that we hear a lot is first-generation college students are kind of figuring out the process along the way. Mm-hmm. And so if you had to give any advice to maybe the parents of some of the college students that are either entering college or in college, and they're trying to support their children as best as they can, any kind of tidbits there that you think are important for the parents to hear about how to best support their children while they're kind of figuring this out?
You mentioned something very important about the scholarships. I got a scholarship in the Tec de Monterrey,
yeah.
To study like abroad, and my parents support like my interest to study abroad, and you can also like in the country, the state has some other options like to finance that, and it helps that. I think that moving to Mexico helped me. I was always pitching like Mexico is the door for all Latin American countries. Everything happens in Mexico. And it's very close to the U.S. too. Wow. So also Mexican. I got my citizenship there, so I'm very proud Mexican too. And so that's why I thought like that helped me. And the scholarship that I got in Mexico opened my mind to like many cultures, many countries. I was studying with people from Dominican Republic, Colombia, Peru, Venezuela. So that helps you a lot because I'm from a very small country, like just 18 million.
In the whole country.
In the whole country. And yeah, so just helping your children to, if they are smart, if they're dedicated, of course, they want to grow, try to find ways that scholarships all over the world that can support this type of student and get also like develop your intellectual skills and social skills as well. Sometimes we don't teach our children to. You need also to know how to communicate, how to be social, because I think every world, well, I don't know about the future, but now it's about connecting with people. It's a network, world, business. So even though we are working with machines or equipment and infrastructure, people, and that's why we're together. It's an association, and we help each other to grow and to be in different places.
Fantastic. You hit on something. One of my first mentors I ever had made it a big deal to separate the what and the how. And so he would really specify that the how was almost more important than the what. Mm-hmm. And he really would say, Alfonso, this is an 80% people business. Mm-hmm. You learn that and you learn how to lead the people. Everything else is going to fall into place. And so I love the way you hinted on that. As I was getting prepared for this, one of the commonalities that I would love to get into is for you, Madeline, you went and worked internships when you were in college. Mm-hmm. And you came to the States and you were 19, 20, 21, and you came by yourself, and I'd love to dig into that. For you, Noemi, you studied abroad and you were around the same time frame, age-wise. And so I'm curious, like, for some, that could be considered a big move to go somewhere where you don't know anybody, go live on your own, go experience these things. I'd love to kind of learn about what was your experience doing that, and kind of was it as scary as maybe some would think it is?
Yeah. So in my case, so part of, I did the summer internships, right? Summer camps at the University of Puerto Rico. One of them was engineering. The coordinator professor, he ended up nominating me for a scholarship, right? NACME. It's a great organization. And then 3M was the one who gave me a scholarship that would cover a lot of the tuition and all that. Plus also part of the scholarship was also opportunity to have the internships.
Fantastic.
So I ended up having internship right after my first year of engineering, right? Like it's very early. And that was, scary, a little bit daunting, right? Like going away first time. But my parents, even if it was scary for them as well, they were always been very supportive. Like if I decide that I wanted to something, they will go and back me up, right? So it was an amazing experience. It kind of helps you grow up, get adults quicker. And it also helped see how the real work is, right? Not just what you're doing in the classes, right? So I would say amazing opportunity, and whoever, as soon as possible, the students should try to get some type of opportunity like that. And even if there are things that are scary, this one, for example, was scary, but then there were a lot of people to help, right? So it's a safe place to be jumping in. As an intern, they knew that you're just starting, right? So a lot of people would help you. And the companies that offer it usually have a lot of support for the interns, right? So it's an amazing opportunity if you can get it.
I was very, very fortunate to have I interned all of summer through General Motors. Mm-hmm. So I spent time in Detroit and spent time in Dallas. Yeah. And they had a very similar structure and support system for the interns. So I recognize how important it is. Part of all our data is to try to partner some of our sponsor companies with students to give that opportunity. So I'm curious, where in the U.S. did you go for your internships?
My first internship was here in Austin.
Okay.
So then 3M, either I could go to Austin or to St. Paul. First one decided here, maybe because it was Texas, and I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting in terms of, the weather should be okay. But then after the second two ones, I decided to go to St. Paul, Minnesota, because it's the headquarters. So it was like the program would have even more people there and more different areas where I could do the internship. Doing that first one in Austin also helped me decide that I wanted to come live here to Austin after school. The weather was something really important in the decision making for where I wanted to live.
That makes sense, especially coming from Puerto Rico.
Yes.
We're warm people.
So I couldn't think myself, Minnesota for the winters.
It's cold. And you went in the summer, right?
I went in the summer, which was really, really, it's beautiful.
Beautiful, nice.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, Noemi, you're studied abroad. Where did you study? I know Tec de Monterrey, but did you study
in Mexico City?
Mexico City, okay.
Yes.
And where was your family living while you were studying
in Ecuador?
So they were in Ecuador.
Yes.
How was that, going away from home, being on your own?
It was tough. At the beginning, it was like, oh, this is just like exchange, and I'm just meeting new people and having fun. But then you realize that you are by your own, and you need to do all the grown-up stuff by yourself, like going to immigration processes and everything, and doing your paperwork, and paying the rent, and that helps you like to become an adult very fast and more mature. But of course, I'm very close to my family. I got the chance to travel back and see them, but it's not having mom and dad supporting you and doing everything like we are used to it when we are young, and also living with our parents. We don't live when we turn 18. We stayed at home. If you study in your country, you stay at home with your parents until you decide that you want to go and live by yourself. But yeah, for me it was nice. I think I was also very mature, but to be like a young 19-year-old girl.
100%.
And I made like the right choices. I was studying actually, like partying all around. I was like a very nerdy. I got the good grades. I was very like dedicated, focused on getting like recognition because I understood all the efforts and the support I was getting from my parents. So,
I'm curious for those that are listening to put it into context. How far away is Ecuador from Mexico City, flight-wise? I'm assuming it's a flight, not a drive.
Yes. Now I think we have a direct flight to Quito, but it's like 5 hours and a half flight. But I was in Guayaquil. My parents live there, and it was like 10 hours flight with a layover in Panama or Colombia. So it was a long flight to go back home. But yes, for me, that was always in my mind that they were supporting me. So I needed to make them proud. So they made a right decision, like
that's amazing,
sending me away. So I was always like keeping the good grades and trying like, I got this diploma or whatever.
That's fantastic. I think the reason I asked that question, Noemi, is a lot of the commonalities that we find with Hispanic culture is this kind of, and it's how much we value family, and it's this desire to stay close, which is amazing. But I think it's kind of impressive that, you were willing to go 10 hours by plane away from your family. For you did internships. Puerto Rico is an island, and so you flew to the U.S. to do internships. I want to kind of expand on that a little bit, Madeline. Like Austin, maybe not as much, but when you went to St. Paul, the demographics of Minnesota are very different. So I'm curious, what was your experience? Was that your first time being in a place where maybe you felt like you were the minority, or not quite?
Probably, but I don't have, it's not like one of the things that I noticed the most. So yeah, maybe because in Puerto Rico, even though we're a minority here, but everybody's just so different. Yeah. There's so much diversity within Puerto Rico. Like in the same family, you have all the so many different colors and everything, right? So I don't recall it being so.
Like it wasn't even a thing you noticed.
I don't think so.
That's fantastic.
So yeah.
Did you ever feel that way, Noemi, when you came from Ecuador to Mexico City, or even now as you made your transition from Mexico to Austin? Have you ever felt where all of a sudden you felt like, oh, wow, I'm the minority now?
Well, not in Mexico. Definitely, we are Latinos.
Yes, everybody, yeah.
So it's not any difference. But here, no, I think just people get surprised when they hear that I'm from Ecuador. Oh, you're from Ecuador? Yes. It's like, I don't know why they picture in their mind by saying that I'm from South America or Ecuador. But yeah, they get very surprised about hearing that I'm from Ecuador. And I don't notice any difference. Like, Texas is very multicultural, so I don't think probably in a different state.
Right, Austin is very
Austin. I look at demographics. Austin's about 70% multicultural.
Yeah,
so it's a fantastic place.
Yeah,
from diversity perspective. Okay, I'm curious. So you guys went to university, and then you get out. You started with IBM, right, Madeline? I'm curious. Yes. You spent 21 years there.
Almost, yeah.
And kind of tracking your trajectory, a lot of different roles, very fast. Right. What was your experience going through IBM? What kind of challenges did you have? I'm kind of curious to dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, it was amazing, right? I'm completely grateful for everything that I was able to do there. Something I guess that helped is that I ended up in a systems group to begin with. And I remember my manager at the beginning said, the first manager, right? Like, he's like, well, you come in this place. We were doing a bring up of systems, and then it's like, you come here and then you see a little bit of everything, like the hardware, the firmware, the OSs, right? And then you can pick which way you want to like go more or
like
deeper,
vertical,
right?
what vertical you want to get into.
And that was how he sold it in the beginning, right? But then I started doing all the work and, the troubleshooting, the problem solving, bringing up things, right, that never worked and you had to figure it out, right? And I actually loved that it was across the systems. And I loved that I didn't have to actually go into one of them specific. So I ended up just in systems engineering. And then it became a thing of just, more responsibility as you keep growing. Another thing that also helped at the beginning, I wanted to, even though I came after the bachelor's to start with them, I always in my mind knew that I wanted to continue studying. And then from the beginning, I told them that I wanted to do my master's, right? Minimum. And also Austin was another good place to come because of UT.
Yeah, that's
Austin.
cool. Okay.
So another thing that was attracting me here. So after, it took me like 2 years to actually get in the program because you have to take the GRE and you had to take this and that, right? But I went back and I remember thinking, well, for the next 3-4 years, it's okay that my career might stall because I'm going to be very busy doing my master's, right, with school. But really, really what I think happened is like it was the other way around. Because then when you're very busy, you become very, very efficient. So then I was able to continue and people were also seeing that I was doing my job, plus I was doing my master's, right? So I think subconsciously it's like, well,
she's very driven.
She's and instead of stalling, I think it helped a little bit in terms of like, I just kept getting the next responsibility, the next one, right? The teams were very flexible in terms of like, I needed to go to take my class and I would come back and I will finish later, and as long as you're letting them know what you're doing and that you need help here or there, things happen. So yeah, that's how kind of the career started at IBM. Midway, I had another opportunity to go abroad for like a month. We had this program called the IBM Corporate Service Corps. Went to work in Turkey for the
fantastic,
a governmental nonprofit organization, and then with a team of diverse, from different countries from IBM. So it was like another amazing opportunity, right? And then it just became the thing of more responsibility as you move forward. And because I had selected systems, I could, I had experiences with the lab, with working with manufacturing, with working with the software teams. So then that's how I became one of the chief engineers for the products, right? Because I could tie
everything
together. That was kind of like, try to, if you need to learn something, go deep at that moment. But I always been more rounded, I guess.
That's fantastic.
So that's,
Okay. I'm curious, when I was reading your backgrounds, so you were at IBM 21 years, and then after you finished your bachelor's, you had a few different roles as you moved around in Mexico. Yeah. I'm kind of curious, kind of walk me through kind of your progression there leading up to coming to, I don't want to get into Austin just yet. I'm kind of curious to learn about your path and your projection in Mexico and kind of what was that like?
Yeah, I started working for a company that was very focused in my career, like international business, like trading and importation and understanding all the processes about it. But I was like inside sales in that company. And I saw like the salespeople were doing the fun stuff, like they were doing business, they were negotiating, they were getting the commissions. So I said, I want to be in sales. And then I transitioned to the tech business. I must say that I started in a telecom company, Alestra, in Mexico. And I got the chance to learn about the IT and telecom business. So I was selling solutions and telecom services. And it was like the different level of what I'm doing now. And I appreciated a lot the help I received from my first boss. She's a great, very talented woman. And I think that helped me, that understanding women, supporting women. And she taught me a lot of things. She was, I think, good like managers and leaders are willing to share that knowledge and to teach and be patient was like also my first job in the tech business, in the tech field. So I didn't understand anything. I was not an engineer, so I was like, what are you talking about? But I picked it up very fast. That was cool. And then I was invited to work for multinational company, that time CenturyLink. And after that, I've been like 2.5 years, and then jumping. But I've been invited. I'm meeting people, and these people then say, "Hey, come to work with me and join my team." So I've been very lucky. That's why also I was talking about connections and why it's important to develop soft skills. And I jumped to Kio, and we were in Austin in the Data Club a few months ago. They were joking like, "Thanks, Kio, for for sharing the talent all around the world." So, and I also had very good leaders and bosses that taught me a lot about the data center industry and the infrastructure behind all the solutions before getting to the server, before getting to the application, what is about the building, the site. And I jumped from that I'm being very ambitious. That's why I believe I was in sales. So I knew that I wanted to have these big customers, the hyperscalers, all the cloud providers, and some others in the industry. And then I got those connections, and my current boss that I really appreciate and love him, that he invited me to be part of his team. He said, "Come work in Austin. Are you willing to move?" And I was like, "Yes, absolutely. This is a one lifetime opportunity." So I was like, "Yeah." I started a long time ago from scratch. I can do it again. So not knowing anyone, not even knowing the city. I've never been in Austin before moving. So I said, "Yeah, why not?" And of course, because of the company I'm working on right now, it's like moving to the big leagues.
Yes.
So I say, yeah, I accept the challenge, and I'll be very happy to continue learning and growing in this amazing industry.
That's fantastic. I want to hit on, both of you said it, and I'm curious, when you guys came into this space, was there a lot of women in the technology? And I'm curious, like from a management perspective, did you work for many women, or were most of your managers men? And I'm kind of curious to learn how that was for you coming up, especially 21 years at the same place.
Probably more men have been managers, my managers. I had some great women managers as well, and mentors and all that, right? I think it has stayed about the same in general in the technical population, about the same percentage of women. Which is kind of sad because we're trying a lot, to get the pipeline going and more girls interested in STEM. But yeah, sometimes you notice it, sometimes you don't, right? It's like one day you might be like, "Oh, I'm the only one here," or there's another one, But in general, you just work with everybody, right? And it is okay. We just need to, all of us need to continue help with the diversity, right? And big companies, good companies are doing that, right? They're trying to get the diverse talents, right? Because in the end, you want to be as diverse as your customers,
the population
right?
that you serve,
the population,
100%.
Right? It brings all of these, the different points of views, right? Will make better products. So,
Noemi, I'm curious. You mentioned a lot of great bosses, some women bosses, and one of the things that I've seen, especially with the team that I have, is the women on my team tend to listen a lot more than they talk, and they wait to speak. And so, like for me, I've learned from talking to them to make sure that I provide a space for them to be vocal, because they're sitting there thinking about everything, and sometimes the men on my team are the ones to just react and say, and like they're brainstorming, they're kind of thinking out loud, And so I'm curious, like, what kind of commonalities or traits have you seen from managers, whether they be women or men, that you felt really empowered and embraced the diversity and made you feel like part of the team, whether you were the only woman on the team? I'm curious to kind of, for those managers that may be listening, that may be a man or maybe a woman and are managing other women in the tech space, what kind of traits really stood out to you as, man, they were super supportive managers?
Not just saying women and men, we all like different, our brains are like different worlds. Yeah. We think very different, and because of our background or our culture, but just understanding the talent you have in front of you to make them grow, like to get that superpowers out of them. So even though if a woman or a man, understanding that the communications could be different, like some people are more vocal, some other like to listen, some other are very graphic. So just understanding what are you dealing, and I think like we when we are managing people, we have thought like there are different ways to communicate. So it's more about like if you have a personality that is quiet, but you know that they can express themselves like in a different way, you need to support that and understanding like for any manager that is listening. It's not, we don't receive the message in the same way. We don't receive the encouragement in the same way. Some people are more like, they need more like support words, like, you're great, I know you can do it. And some other like, just do it, and they will do it. So it's more about like recognizing what people gets like how to receive the message and how can they perform in a better way. So I learned a lot from this former boss. She was telling me that like you need to understand men receive the messages in a different way, women as well. But in general terms, we have different personalities, and we can also be very graphics or listen better or talking. I don't know. So it's more like understanding what are you having in front of you, what people are you having in front of you.
That's fantastic. I'm curious, Madeline, what have been your experience with the managers that you look back to and you're really grateful for being in your career?
Yes, I agree with Noemi about everybody's just different. So I think the good manager would learn how each of their people behave or react, and how to better serve them, right? The best managers for me have been the ones that allow us to do the work, like no micromanaging. Is just, so what is it that we need to do, right? What's the mission, right? And then allow us to go and work on that and be supportive, removing obstacles, right? Like I always think the management team should be there, and we're there to remove obstacles instead of, it's not like you don't work for your manager. And so, a lot of times it should be more like the manager should be working for you.
Absolutely.
To remove all that thing and make sure that the projects can move forward, right? That's kind of, that have been the best ones, right? The ones that allow us to do the work, the ones that allow and support us to do the work, and that take the interest to learn how we each are different and how we work better.
I mean, I've never heard anybody vocalize it that way, and it's super deep. Like, the best managers actually work for you. Mm-hmm. That's such a deep statement, Madeline, and I'm going to steal that, by the way, if you don't mind. Sure. Okay. So curious, you guys are starting your career. You're at IBM. You get yourself eventually to Kiel, but you're still in Mexico. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of curious then, two really big transitions, or one really big transition happened in y'all's lives. One for you left a place of employment after 21 years. That's such a big decision. I'd love to kind of dig into what led to that decision making. And then for you, you've transitioned to leaving Mexico and coming to the U.S., landing in Austin. I'm kind of curious, what was your experience? What easy or hard of a transition? Because there's a lot of things there with immigration and changes and permits and visas,
culture.
So I'd love to dig in a little bit. Why don't we start with you, Madeline? And I'm kind of curious, what led to your decision to eventually leave? 21 years is that's a career.
Yeah. Something opportunities came up, right? And
how did those? I'm kind of curious, just from a
network
people business. So
right.
like networking. So somebody you knew had an opportunity for you to consider.
Right? And then it was something to think a lot through, right? Because of everything that I was doing, right? But the timing just worked out great. The project that I was working there and the new company in a growth area, right? So it was daunting, a little bit overwhelming to be a new hire after so long, right? Like I'm onboarding.
You probably went from knowing everybody, knowing all the systems,
knowing everything,
the people, up and down,
how everything
to all of a sudden
moved.
You're the new employee,
right? So new employee, but big challenge. Great decision. I'm happy to have done it, right? To have taken it, and it's a growing segment, right? Data centers with NVIDIA, with AI is powering everything.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things. Came up, thought through it very, very carefully, right? Pros and cons, and then moved and new experiences, and it's great.
I'm curious, Madeline, you said networking. I'm kind of curious for those maybe young professionals that are listening to the podcast and thinking like, what should I be getting involved in? I think there's this, sometimes there's a misconception on what networking is. And sometimes it's, well, I'm just going to do really well at my job. And networking is difficult sometimes because it requires to be done after work. It requires to be done maybe extracurricular activities, weekends, maybe going to a dinner, maybe going to a conference. So I'm kind of curious, what has been your view on networking? Has it always been that it's important? And then I'm kind of curious to learn, how specifically did you get involved to meet the people that got you to where you are today?
Yeah, so it depends on the stage of life in which you're at, right? Like sometimes you're just so very busy with other things, right? That is just pretty hard. But making the effort. In my specific case, it was people that I already knew that had worked with me, right? And then they were already in the other place, right? So it's kind of like, they, and then you get asked to, is this considered this, right? But yeah, networking, it's more about like find the right relationships with the right people, right? And learning about other areas. Usually that's a way of getting that. And I said it depends on the stage of life, right? Because with I have a kid, right? So sometimes I cannot go to the dinner that I would have wanted to go, yeah. Right? But it's a choice that you make, right? And then the next time you probably try to make it work. And then, because as you mentioned before, it's about people, right? How do we work with people and knowing about opportunities from others, so.
Fantastic. Okay. And Noemi, I want to circle back. You mentioned, if I heard you correctly, so you had somebody that you had worked with before and they said, hey, we have this opportunity. It's in Austin. It's a great company. What was your thought process I heard you say, like, this is the big league now. You'd never been to Austin. I'm kind of curious, like, okay, you make the decision. I'm going to go. I'm going to do this. Then what happens? How was that process for you? And how easy or not easy was that?
Well, first of all, I think it's the recruitment process. Like, my thoughts are like, am I going to pass? Like,
the interviews and
everything.
The whole screening process. Okay.
Yeah. So I was very nervous because I know that's now the big leagues and it's like global company. And I was like, am I ready? Like, they will like me to be part? Am I like smart enough, good enough? My English will be great for them to say, okay, she can communicate. I was doubting myself. I think, like, I don't know, but some people put themselves in that place. Like, am I good enough? Am I smart enough? So I say, okay, I need to focus. I know I can do it. And like prepare my cases and everything for interviews. After that, after I got the job offer, I was like, yeah, great. That's the because everything started like making the decision. I think is easier if you know what you want, but then the process to get to that point. And after I was very happy working in Mexico. I was in a good place. I was enjoying my team, my work. I was growing very fast there also. But I thought like this, moving from Latin America or from a very small country like Ecuador to then say I'm being invited to the US to work for this huge tech company doesn't happen very often. So I said, yes, I'm like leaving behind all the good stuff that I got in Mexico, the good place, the good team, the great bosses, and I will start from scratch. And of course, moving here was everything about immigration, because now that you made the decision, you also depend about the immigration process. So once I got that confirmation, then I said like, okay, I'm moving to Austin. This is the opportunity. And my bosses understood very well. Like I love them also because they say, yeah, we understand. It's not like we are stopping you or yeah, it's your time to continue growing. And moving here, it has been like amazing. It's the best experience I've had, but I've also encountered like difficulties like in the path, but not at work. It's more like the immigration process, but the welcoming. Because also I work for a global company, and we have a lot of people coming from everywhere. So it's easier to get the acceptance and to understand if your English is not perfect or if you like make mistakes where you're talking. But it's also about understanding how the Americans communicate. I must say, I speak a lot. I'm very vocal. I'm very loud also, and people here more direct, and we talk and talk and talk. So I needed to learn like just go to the point and just say the minimum words that you need to. But for me, it was tough, and the emails I was like writing a lot and asking about family and stuff and go to the point and not taking the like personal. If someone like just texts you, hey, I need this, like, okay, cool. But the culture could be a shock, like, she's not saying or he's not saying hi or good morning. But it's just a cultural thing. So I got used to that, and I don't think it's an issue. But I also have like, I don't stop doing it. For me, it's like, I will say hello, how are you? Good morning, how are you? To everyone. That's part of my culture. That's part of me. Yeah. So I will continue with that. And just to cut, now that I'm talking too much, I hug when I say hi, and Americans don't kiss in the cheek. We do that. So every time I was like seeing new people, for me was like jumping to hug my colleagues, my teammates, and now they see me and hug me, so they know. It's like some others just say hi, and now that they see me, it's like, oh yeah, she hugs, so it's okay.
You know, I do want to pull the string a little bit on the immigration process, and I'm curious to see a lot of people that maybe have heard or hearing this podcast that they're not alone is kind of the biggest message there.
Yes.
But you hit on something, and it's been a conversation between myself, Alex, and Freddie about, you know, the differences in cultures across, especially when you start working with different parts of the world. You hit on it. You know, us Hispanic and Latinos are very friendly. And so there's a lot of small talk, there's hugs, there's even like when you start a conversation with somebody, it's not uncommon for the first 5-10 minutes to be, hey, how are your family? How is your son or daughter? How is life? Mm-hmm. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, we have 10 minutes to talk about the business thing we were going to talk about. And that's not as common as you maybe start working with the different cultures. And then also the aspect of, you know, Alex told a story to us about working in Mexico. You have to be very direct, and you have to, when you finally get to like, you want to give the teams direction, you almost have to be like, hey guys, come on, like this is what we need to do. Go. where here that can be perceived as very direct, almost rude. And so I'm kind of curious, have you guys ever, knowing that you grew up in Ecuador and you spent time in Mexico, you grew up in Puerto Rico, have you had to like adjust the way you are, or maybe like separate, like this is how I am at home because of my culture versus work? I'm kind of curious to dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, I think because my work time has always been here. I probably know how to behave in the work here, right? Behave, in quotations here,
yeah,
right?
Fair enough.
But however, this is something that is true for any, right? It's not just the Hispanic; it's all the cultures. Back to being able to work it was like a month in Turkey. A lot of the pre-work that we needed to do. It was about cultural differences.
That's awesome.
Because it's like the way they do business there is also different, right? And part of the reason of that program actually was so that we could think more about global leaders, right? That doesn't matter. I also work with people sometimes from Taiwan, right, throughout the career, right? And you need to see that there's just differences in how we all work. And that's why even within your team, right, that goes back to just ask questions, right? And if you're not sure how to behave, just ask the questions or try to research how the culture is different and adapt so that you're respectful of their culture. Not adapt so that you're hiding who you are, but mostly about being respectful to their ways, right? And it should also be a two-way street, but if they're not doing it, at least you should be able to do 100%. It, right? Try your best to respect their cultures.
I love one of the things that you said there, and I'll rephrase. It takes a little bit of work on the individual to do a little bit of homework,
right,
on how to be respectful, and that's super insightful. That's probably another tidbit that I'm going to keep in my. Sorry. See, this is where I think the stories start to. I'm kind of curious to kind of go into two different tangents here. One, I'd love to dig into your process for immigration. What were some of the challenges, and then for you, Madeline. You brought up the daughter, I believe, right? I'm kind of curious to get into what was your experience becoming a mother, then making the decision to be a working mother. So I feel like women in today's world have a really tough decision to make, and both are, you can either stay at home or you can work, and depending on who you talk to, either decision could be good or bad. And so it's one of those decisions that everybody has to make for themselves. And for a lot of the women that are in the workspace today that are either going to be a mother or are mothers, I'm curious, like, what has been your advice and your thought process along the way? And then, Noemi, do you have children? No. Okay. So I'd love to this is where we're maybe going to like diverge a little bit based on life paths, but these such great topics. So first, Noemi, I'll start with you on. So you made the process. You mentioned that, it wasn't anything work related. It was mostly the immigration process.
Yes.
I'm curious, what about that process really stood out to you? Because the reason I asked the question, and this is, I recognize that it's uncomfortable. I feel like sometimes immigration is a taboo subject at times, and sometimes people don't talk about it because it's filled with shame maybe, or maybe embarrassment, when in reality, it has nothing to do with anything that you've done or created. It literally, it's the process and it's the way it works. And sometimes, but it does come with a lot of, most of the people, and myself included, that have gone through this process, I was naturalized, for example, and I hid that from a lot of people. And even from a naturalization ceremony, I went, did it, came back to work, didn't tell us all that I done it. And so there was just a lot of just uncomfortableness where, like Alex, for example, he was telling us one of the first times I met Alex, he had just got back from his naturalization ceremony. And it was like, for me now looking back, it was like, hey, we need to tell everybody, like, this is a huge deal for you. Like, at the time, I don't think I was mature enough to understand that. And so that's why I want to ask the question, but I do recognize that it's a taboo subject for people. So I'm curious, what was your experience like, and kind of share what you feel comfortable sharing.
Yes, thanks. I'm under a work visa, so it's like a temporary valid document to work in the U.S. And the process to come here was easy. I got the interview, I got all the paperwork. But one time this year, when I went to Mexico for a business meeting and I came back, the officer canceled my valid visa at the border. So I got freaked out, of course, because I didn't know what to do. And you at that point, you don't expect like having a valid document, coming back for continue your work, getting a visa cancellation, and you cannot use your cell phone there. You have been interviewed and everything, and the situation of being in that position of not knowing. And I want to share this because in the future, and I talked this with Alex as well, and we have also very similarities, and he told me about different processes or forms that I can fill in to help my situation. But after I got the chance to enter the U.S. because I had my Ecuadorian passport with me. I'm here with a Mexican passport. That's one of the benefits of also being Mexican. Is I had this visa that's part of Canada, U.S., and Mexico. So it's like a professional exchange. And because, with an Ecuador passport, I don't know how long it will have taken to move to the U.S.
Get a work visa.
To get my work visa. So I had my Ecuadorian passport with a tourist visa, so I came in. And after that, I immediately called my boss. Like, he supported me so much. He was in shock. I was in shock. I didn't want to cry, but you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I was like tearing up. I didn't know what was going on, if I was able to get back. I thought that I've been banned from the U.S. Like, what happened? And he did everything inside the company, because once you don't have a valid document, you
can't work.
You can work. You have been put in a leave of absence. You're in a hold. Everything shuts down for you. You don't have a computer. You don't have anything. And I was like, I don't have a job anymore. And I live in the U.S. and I have like bills to pay and like
rent,
rent, everything. So I was super scared. The first week I was like in a state of numbness. I was in shock. I was depressed. But also I have like a mentor in the company I work for, and he told me like, no. Stop that. I don't care that you are sad, that you are stressed or depressed. You need to wake up and you need to start moving. What do you need to come and stay here and work again? It was like, okay, I need to wake up and start moving around. So all the processes after I got the support from the company I work for, and understanding what I needed to do. The immigration team was helping. The lawyers was helping. There's no other solution. You need to go back to Mexico and start the process again. So I was like, oh, really? So the officer didn't give me enough time, because even though I entered with a tourist visa that is supposed that you have 6 months to stay in the U.S., he only gave me 13 days. So I couldn't appeal or do something inside. I needed to go back because my permit to be in
the States will expire.
Will expire. So I went back. I also didn't have where to live. My best friend in Mexico helped me. She received me, and I'm very thankful. But it's like scary because you don't want to crash a home and you don't know for how long. And I was also looking for rent and a place to live and rent, and also trying to be able to not disconnect myself from my work here in the U.S. So it was a very scary process. After that, everything was solved, and I came back. I'm here now. But I went to the whole process of getting the visa, and in the appointment, they apologized, because what happened is the officer that interviewed me that day was not experienced. He didn't know about the visa work I have, and he asked the questions that was not supposed to be asked. He didn't want to review my documents, and they gave me back the visa. But again, when I entered, they are curious. People is curious. So I already have in my file that I have a canceled visa.
Canceled visa, yeah.
So they put me to the little room again and
to ask you questions again.
And I was like shaking. It's like, are they going to cancel my visa again? I'll be able to like enter the US like with a work visa, because I can enter with a tourist, but you cannot work. So I was in the limbo for 2 months. No job. Like I couldn't.
2 months.
2 months. No home. No nothing. All my stuff were here. It was a very scary moment. I appreciate all the efforts that my boss and directors and all the bosses above that did to help me come back. But it was the first time happening. No one knew what was going on and what to do with me. So I was like, after that, I was almost be transferred to the Mexican branch. But I got the appointment earlier, so I could return easily without all the process to start working in Mexico for the company, and then again trying to come back. But it is for me, and nowadays the mental health is important. For me, it was a crash moment. My mental health was still like trembling during the next months I came back, because at some point you start like realizing if this is my place, something like someone is telling me that I should not be here. Yeah. So it's scary, and to pick up everything and catch and all the things you left and talking about work was hard. I was like, okay, I need to focus and I still have that. I haven't left. I haven't traveled abroad since then, but I need to do it because my work requires it. So next year, my boss helped me and said, okay, this year you don't need to travel.
But in January.
Yeah, we don't have to have the same experience twice in a year. So next year, I hope I won't have any troubles, but next year, it will be another year and I'll be prepared and everything. But yeah, what are the odds? I don't know. But it's hard. It's hard. And you always have that in mind, that you confront that and encounter that situation that you will be interviewed. And that day, that person has a lot of power.
Power over you, yeah.
A lot of power. They say you're in or you're out. So I thought, yeah, working for this company is like, they will never touch me. It's not like, oh, Monster Inc. company. What company is that? No, it's like it's a
big, well-known
company. It's like, yeah, this is not a joke. They fill out on a process to bring me here. Like, I'm legal. I'm doing this because they already did the scrutiny and interview me and everything. So someone that is not in the field saying, no, you're not allowed to work here. Like you don't have you're not actually, the person say, you're not a 60-year-old person to be advising the CEO. You don't have like the knowledge. Like what are you talking about?
Wow.
So it was very tough.
So that was a 2-month process. I'm curious, and you hit on 2 things that I wanted to expand on. One is while you're on a work visa, I'm kind of curious. A lot of people may not know this, but the concept of like you being here, getting in trouble is not a thing. Like you have to be very careful about what you do and like how you operate because you are on a work visa. And I think that's a lot of people don't realize that. And I think too, and I was going to ask you, have you traveled international again? And there's probably this like fear maybe or nervousness around it. And I'm kind of curious kind of what goes through your head the first time that you will. I think you said next year, hopefully.
Yes. It's just because all the things you have accomplished for now that can be gone just because one person decides that even though you have a valid document, I had the valid document, to say, no, this is not valid. I don't think that you actually are able to get this visa. I don't know how you get it. Cancel. What? Like, I'm working here. I'm a professional. So yeah, there is a lot of fear. But I need to be brave and I will do it again. Of course, I'm not entering. So now it's going to be like a more circus situation to get in the States because I'm not putting a foot in the Austin airport. It's very small. So I learned my lesson. Probably I'll go to a bigger airport.
A big international. Got it.
Yeah. Yes. This is supposed to be international, but I don't know what happened. But
Got
it happened. And yes, not coming to Austin is going to
Houston, Dallas, Miami.
Adding a layoff that I don't need it. Like Mexican flight is to Mexico, a flight is 2 hours, 2 hours and a half. Now I need to do more things, and because it's my territory, so it's going to be hard, but it's part of the show. And yeah, I thought twice. I missed a lot of things back in Mexico, friends getting married or family. My grandfather passed away. I was very afraid to leave. And those moments are like, comes to your mind, like, am I in the right place? Should I go back? What should I do? But it's like just keeping in mind what is your goal, what are the reasons you are here for? And for me, it's like be the best professional and keep growing in this field. And at some point, like be one of the big leaders you are. And yes, that's helped me to be empowered and say, okay, I can do it. I will survive.
You hit on something, but you mentioned your manager. I'm kind of curious for any managers that are listening to this that maybe have employees that are on a work visa or maybe are going through similar struggles. What you talk so highly about how much he helped. Kind of what advice would you give the managers that maybe are listening that have employees in similar situations here?
Yeah, having empathy. Like I think he also understood because he is from Venezuela. So for him speaking to the upper levels, like here's the thing, it's not like for us it's different. Like he told his story and he escalated the topic to the bigger level, to a bigger level, saying, for me is recalling when I did this. And he talk about his path. It was very touchy, and it's like, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for explaining how it's for us to leaving behind family and starting not knowing anyone, having no family in the city, and having all these dreams like the American dream, and start building your life and trying to grow in your career, and then someone took that away. It's difficult, and people sometimes doesn't have the empathy to say, okay, this means a lot. It's not like, oh, she can get another job. You already put all your dreams and goals and I expect to keep working in this company like for many, many years. And yeah, that's what you picture in your mind. And I think that he understood because he also is from Latin America, and he shared that with the levels above, and he was searching and trying to understand what he could do for me to keep working and put me back on track, because I was not having a payroll. I needed to continue paying stuff here. So it was a scary moment, but having that empathy, and I think that trying to support, even though you can say, well, yeah, we can hire someone else. Sometimes it's not only about hiring someone else. It's like the life of a person that is in your hands and the future. And I think that, yeah, probably that.
That's fantastic. Well, I appreciate, Noemi, you sharing that. I know that's sometimes uncomfortable to talk about, but I do think there's going to be a lot of listeners that are going to resonate, that feel comfortable. I think for me, you hit the nail on the head. I remember after I naturalized, the first time I took an international trip was for work, and we were going to Mexico. And I remember feeling this like nervousness getting on the plane. I felt nervousness going through immigrations there. And then on the way back, there was this nerve, even though I had an American passport at this point, but it says, obviously, I was born in Mexico. And you just have this like, well, what if something that I don't know about is flagged, and what does it mean for me? And I think you being brave enough to talk about just your feelings and how where you were from a mental health perspective, that's super powerful. So thank you for sharing. I know it's not easy. Madeline, I'm kind of curious to shift to you. And you mentioned you have a daughter, 12, 12-year-old daughter. So I'm kind of curious, walk me through during, where were you when you had your daughter, and kind of what was that experience for you of going on leave, coming back? Do you feel like it set you behind? What were those decisions that you were kind of going through?
Yeah, I think this is good times in which like there's so much flexibility, possible flexibility in which the ways you can do your work, right? And again, good companies make sure that you have that flexibility because they don't want to lose talent,
yeah.
right? When in my case, when I had her, everybody was very supportive. All the management was very supportive about it. I decided just to take, at that point, it was just like a 3-month leave. And when I came back, they actually gave me an assignment as the chief engineer for one of the the most visible project that we had, right? So I appreciate that they did that because they didn't assume that because I had a baby, I wouldn't want to go there, right? Fantastic. So yeah, so they just offered. They wouldn't have made me do it, right? If I wasn't in the right, if I didn't necessarily want to take that on, right? But I appreciate that they didn't assume. They still offered, and I got all the support needed, right? And the team was very helpful as well. And you end up just working as, these days, to me, work is like work-life integration, right? Like you just work here, and then you have to do things for the family, and then you work again, and then you just make it happen in a whole thing, right? There's not a lot of divisions. So that's how I did it, right? And then I came back full-time, work on that project. Everything went great in general, right? The team, I mentioned sometimes you work with other cultures, right? So I was working at that point sometime with Taiwan in the night. So I had like night meetings, and then she would be in my lab, and then they would know that she was there. So it's like, you do what you have to do. But I also have had mentees and friends and other people that I've seen that have done it different ways, right? Some of them have taken longer leaves, and then they come back, and then they keep working in their projects. Some of the other ones have actually come back part-time, and they also continued moving in their career. So probably we're just being lucky to work for such good companies that take care of the employee. And I've also have friends that actually left for a while, 5 years, so the kids were in school, and then they came back. So I would say everybody needs to decide how they want to handle it. Try to look for companies that will support you and your family. And then, make it your own. Another thing would be, if you want to do something, don't shy away from it just because you assume that it's going to be hard with the family. If you really want to do it, go for it, and then you figure it out as you move forward.
Madeline, you said two things that I want to pull on. So one, you were having meetings at home with your daughter with you pre-COVID. So I feel like COVID really normalized that for me. I have an 8 and a 6-year-old, and during COVID, they were 5 and 2. And so the concept of daddy's in a meeting, don't go into that room, they don't understand that. Yeah. And so 50% of my calls, I had one child or another somewhere on me.
Yes.
And I feel that normalized it. It kind of softened the meetings, that people on the call would start making faces. But this was probably 8 years ago, 9 years ago. So what was the acceptance back then? I feel like it was very different times.
Yeah, it was different times, but still goes back to the people that you work with. And if it's a good team, they also encourage it, right? Or embrace it. They embrace it, right? Because it's business, but it's also personal, right? Everything, right?
Yeah.
There's always the personal aspect. So, I think you should try to work for a company that offers you flexibility and support as much as possible.
I'm curious, you use the word work-life integration, Madeline, and I haven't heard anybody word it that way. And if I understood you correctly, it's kind of like this concept of some people are able to separate, if you will, work and then life. And for you, it was like learning you just have to be flexible and kind of ebb and flow and go back and forth. Right. I'm kind of curious, like, is that like a motto or something that's unique to you, or do you think that's company?
Yeah, I think I learned it when I was working there. Because it was earlier, it was work-life balance, right? And how do you achieve that balance? And thinking it has to be like 50-50, right? And it's not, right? It's whatever makes sense at the right time. And as you did mention about, working through COVID, right? And we have now so many tools that allow us to engage more, even if we're remote, even if we have the family there. And Alfonso, something else that you mentioned, right? You are asking us as women, right? But men also have families, right? Yeah. And you have your kids in the meeting, right? So I think that realization for everybody that is just supporting parents, right? It's so important. And my current company also, they want to make sure that we're taking care of our families, right? Because if you do that, then we're going to do the best that we can for the company. And our CEO, one of his mottos is like, do your life's work, right? They want us to do our life's work. That means that we have to be taken care of, and we're taking care of our family so that we can do that type of work. So technology is here to help us to do that flexibility and that integration, right? And it means that I might be at a school choir concert last night, but I'll still check the Slack or the email just in case something came up, right? Because of the different time zones. But at the same time, I went to the school choir concert, right? I was not going to miss that, right? So I love that flexibility.
I've never heard it that way, and it resonates with my style. Like for my team, I tell them right off the bat, like not uncommon for me to get up early morning and do my work, and then sometimes I'll leave at 4 because I have to do things with the kids or I have to do certain things. But then I always put my kids to bed. And so I have 2 or 3 hours, maybe 2 hours, depending on how long it takes them. But I'm in a quiet room. I'm putting my kids to bed. And so I'll normally fire up my computer so the light doesn't block them, it doesn't hit them. But I get quiet, uninterrupted work time, 7, 8 o'clock at night. And for my team, it's like, hey, I have zero expectation for you to respond to me at 7, 8 o'clock at night. But in my phase in life right now, this works really well. It allows me to come home, allows me to be available. But then I just have to pivot maybe when I do my work. And I've never used that I've never heard that term. And so that's such a powerful conversation. Yeah. I think the other thing that I would like to expand, Madeline, on, and you mentioned is if you're a manager listening and you have an employee that's going on leave, when they come back, I think this was powerful. And you said, don't assume that they will or will not be able to do a certain aspect. Like, I think if I were to reiterate, give them the opportunity as if you would, and let them make the decision whether or not that's something that they're able to take on. Right.
If you know that they're the right person to do the project, to take that opportunity, if you know that, do not make assumptions for them, right? Let them decide. And it's okay, right? Back to the point. I could have said, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for this, later, right? But at the moment, it just made sense. And I really, really appreciate that they didn't make the decision for me, the assumption for me, right? We should be asking people instead of just assuming.
That's fantastic. That's super powerful. As I'm looking at and trying to look at the time and making sure, when we invited you guys to come, first of all, thank you so much for speaking with us. I'm kind of curious if there was any topics or conversations or points that's like, I'd really love to be able to share this part of my story or my journey, because it's going to resonate with other people. I know, like, for example, when I've done a podcast once before, there were certain tidbits that I wanted to like have maybe the opportunity or maybe me as the host open the door to kind of engage in those discussions. And I want to provide the opportunity for you to kind of go into that space. And so I'll start with you, Noemi. Is there anything that you've thought about as you were preparing mentally for like, all right, what questions is Alfonso going to ask, or what is he going to get into? Anything that you wanted to make sure that we kind of got into or that you shared as part of your story?
Based on the whole trajectory I've like walked since I started in the tech business, like, don't doubt yourself. Like, for me, that was like inner struggle. Like, sometimes I'll be able to learn this. I'll be able to work for like a tech business, understanding the data center and or telecom or IT. If I'm not an engineer, and put all the efforts to learn, to teach yourself, to read about that, and if you like it, it will be easier. And if you are focused to get to that point that you can have conversations and talk about the topic, you're ready. Like, you can lead a team, you can lead a territory, and it's more like trusting yourself and be taking the courage to do it. Sometimes also women hesitate a lot in terms also I interview people in the past like, I don't have like good English, and they actually have, but women thinks, oh, it's not perfect, but men like, yeah, they are like more empowered to say, yes, I'll do it. Like, we need to have the same. We need to also believe in ourselves and say, yeah, we can do it. Or we can teach ourselves to make to that point. And yeah, sometimes it's difficult. I'm surrounded by engineers. Like, you have a different feel and knowledge that I don't have. But at some point, like, I listen a lot, and I'm very curious also because I was in sales. Like, I need to understand what I'm selling. It's not like just pitching something. Yeah. It's like they will ask about a very particular technical part of the data center. I'll be like, no, I don't know. So you need to be involved in that. So understanding and having that like hunger to learn more stuff, and just trust in the process, like you're learning and meeting the right people that will be willing to teach you and have the patience and say, okay, I could be your mentor. Some other people are not like that.
100%.
And they are very like, this is my knowledge. But connecting those dots.
Awesome. Thank you, Noemi. How about you, Madeline? Like, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Is there any topics that you wanted to make sure we hit on that you think are important?
Yeah. First, you did such a wonderful job of good topics, to help us prepare. So thank you for that. And then a little bit more about mentoring, right? Like, it's just so important both ways, right? To be a mentor, to be a mentee, go find people that you admire or people that you want to learn things from, and reaching out to them, and just at least for a 30-minute conversation, right? And you everybody will learn, right? But also, that's to be a mentee, but also be a mentor, right? And help the next generation. Like, I'm so grateful for everything, all the opportunities that I've had, right? Many, many opportunities, right? And we have to give back. We have to pay it forward. So, because, we just have to bring others, right? And by the way, I think in one question it was like about, so how do we get the pipeline or the others, right? And you're able to move ahead also, because then you're getting the next generation to do the things that you were kind of covering, right? And that allows you more time to do other things, right? So you bring people along, right? You need to help. In the end, we need to help others, give back and pay it forward.
Madeline, this reminds me of a conversation I was having with Anthony yesterday as we went to dinner, we were walking in our hotel, and he made a comment that really stood out to me. He says, Alfonso, as I think about mentorship, every single person that I consider a mentor, I don't think I ever asked to be my mentor. Mm-hmm. It just happened organically. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious, like if somebody's listening right now, Madeline, and I think of, there's 2 or 3 people that I mentor. 2 of them are young Latinas in the space. And then they're going to hear this and they're going to be like, man, I really would love to connect, right? Like with both of these strong women. How would you like, do you encourage them reaching out to just say, hey, would you mentor me? Is it one of those, like, do you just have organic conversations, but you never ask? Like, I feel like it's such a difficult question that people don't verbalize.
Yeah. So, you bring the point of there's formal mentorship programs, right? And then you are assigned to somebody and then you meet and you try to set some goals and, you work on those goals for an amount of time, right? That's a way of mentoring, right? A lot of them also are, like you said, they're just like you connect with somebody, right? Some of the mentors that I've had, for 2 decades have been more like that. That it's just like they take an interest in what I was doing and helping, and then we just created this relationship, right? And the back and forth of they help me, I help them learn things, right? But in general, if somebody wants to, I think that anybody can spare 30 minutes of their time to talk with anybody, right? So I tell people, if you want to, just set up 30 minutes, right? And we will see where it goes, right? It doesn't mean that we're going to be a mentor or whatever relationship, right? But it's at least we got to chat, we got to learn a little bit more about each other. And if it makes sense, then we keep doing it, right? And that creates the mentoring relationship. So if anybody wants to do that, right? In my case, it's like reach out and let me know that you just want to talk for a little bit, and we'll figure it out.
That's fantastic. One of the things that we're trying to do with All Data is to really provide just that platform to allow people that want to mentor to kind of say, hey, I'm willing to give back, as you say, and those that are looking for a mentor but maybe are shy or maybe are uncomfortable, provide them that platform. One of the last few topics that I want to get into, and I'm just being conscious of our time here, but it's come up a few times, and Noemi, I think you hit on it, is this concept of imposter syndrome. As I've gone into every position that I've personally had, I have had that same, like that first, like, well, wow, like, are they going to, like, I still even tell my wife this today, like, they're going to realize one day, like, I'm an imposter, and they're going to, like, I don't know how I got to the role that I'm in now, but they're going to realize it. And then it's going to be game over for me. Right. Like, it's so hard to overcome that. And as you were talking, like, it's such a prevalent, like, as you went through your interviews, you questioned whether you were going to be good enough. As you started work, you questioned whether or enough you knew enough on the engineering side. I even heard you say something like, well, hey, like, I'm the only non-engineer in this space. And so I think the common message for me is like we're our own worst critics. And I'm curious, how have you overcome imposter syndrome? Because I will tell you from the outside, as I prepared for this interview, both of your resumes were extremely amazing. And it was just an honor knowing that I was going to talk to both of you. And so it's kind of curious, like, we're our own worst critics. I'm my own worst critic of myself at times. So I'm kind of curious, how has imposter syndrome materialized in your space? And more importantly, like, how have you overcome it?
I don't know. I still feel like you're saying so.
It's so common, but people don't talk about it.
Yeah. But also at the same time, I think experience, time doing something gets you more experience and confidence. So yeah, sometimes I feel like, oh my God, am I doing, am I doing enough, right? But so then later, it's like, I do have the experience, right? I have gone through so many things, right? And a moment that I remember from my career, actually that was early on, it was as a new hire that was trying to figure out things, didn't know much about the organization, or this is like 20 years ago, sitting on the corner of the room, conference room. Right. So the people that were, everybody was in the table
and I was in the
side, corner. Right. And I remembered that because I was like, that's where I'm supposed to be. Right. But I remember the day that I actually sat at the table, and I don't remember how long it took. I don't know, some months, maybe even a year. Right. But I remember sitting at the table because I knew what I was doing. Right. Because I had learned what I was working on. It was my project. I've been there long enough, right? So just sitting at the table made a difference, right?
Like you felt like you belonged.
Right.
Was
Yes.
that something you did yourself, or was it something that somebody enabled you to, hey,
No,
Madeline, come join us?
Maybe, like, I don't remember
okay.
exactly, but I think what I remember is the confidence that had built up to that moment where I felt okay being at the table, right? So somehow, I still feel like, have I done enough? Like you mentioned at the beginning, right? It's like, but yes, I have done many things, and you learn and you get extra confidence with time. So,
no, it's so powerful. As you mentioned that, I was thinking in my head, when I worked for the same manager for 10 years, which is very rare.
Yeah.
And now in my current role, we report into the same manager now. And, he kind of pulled me off to the side recently and said, Alfonso, when you're with your team down, you're very vocal. You're very you run the meeting. You're comfortable taking the space, if you will, and filling the void. When you're in other meetings, because I'm usually the youngest person in the room or the lowest level person in the room, most of the people in the room are directors and VPs. I usually am quiet, and I'm usually just out of respect for the space in the room, and I'm the new person in that room now. And so it's kind of like him encouraging me to hey, don't change who you are because the room is different. And almost like it resonates, be comfortable sitting at the table. Like you belong at the table. So I'm curious for you, Noemi, you've mentioned a lot of obstacles where you've thought maybe well, hey, how are you going to overcome this? Well, how have you, what kind of tools have you used to overcome imposter syndrome?
Well, I think it's a daily work. You need to pause and remember what you have accomplished, and just be gentle with you when you're having those invasive thoughts. And you have your background experience, you own the project, the deal. So you're ready to discuss with the other people and, like you said, feel comfortable to sit at the table. So just making that pause and remember, because sometimes we are our worst criticism. So it's just remember that you are here because of a reason and you work for it, and just try to be gentle on those moments, because it could be scary, and you can actually make mistakes about doubting yourself and not be able to share with directors or your VPs if you're very quiet. Just if you are ready to speak and just share.
100%. One of my best friends that I'm sure is going to be listening to this, he normally tends to get himself in I call it his pit of despair. And usually, and this is where I think the importance of mentorships or having somebody that you can just call in those moments and being like, hey, I'm doubting myself, or I'm having this. Usually for me, my keyword for him is hey, just get out of your pit. It's not that bad. And for him, it's that mental, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I am. And okay, thank you. That's all I needed. Yes. And so I'm glad you said that. Okay. So as we're wrapping up, I'll kind of pause here and say, one, thank you for joining us. You guys are our first podcast, and I think it's super important. Anything you want to leave and make sure the audience hears kind of, you guys want to share with anybody?
Keep the good work and then pay it forward if you can. Yeah.
Believe in yourself and feel proud of being a minority and be a Latino or Hispanic in a different culture. We have a lot of things to share, and we are very capable people, and we also have learned and experienced different things in our life that could help to see and develop or solve problems in a different way.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you very much on behalf of Hola Data and as well as the Lighthouse. Thank you for having us, and hopefully you guys have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias.